The mansion stood tall in the heart of the city, shining under the moonlight like a palace from an old fairy tale. Every wall was polished, every chandelier sparkled, and every corner smelled of wealth. Inside, silence was something that never left the house. The silence was heavy, but it was a proud silence. Silence that spoke of power, order, and control. For years, the wealthy woman who lived there had built her life around control. Her servants moved only when she commanded. The gardeners trimmed every hedge to perfection. The cooks prepared every dish exactly as she liked. Nothing was ever out of place. Nothing ever disturbed her peace. But that night, everything changed. It started with a small sound, almost too soft to notice. The cry of her newborn baby broke the mansion's silence for the first time. At first, she smiled. To her, the sound of her baby was like music, fragile but beautiful. She thought the child would calm down in seconds. Babies cried, after all. That was normal, but the crying did not stop. The small whimper grew into sharp cries. The baby's tiny lungs filled the air with sound that echoed through the great hallways. The sound bounced off the marble floors and golden ceilings until it felt like the whole mansion was screaming. The servants rushed from their rooms. The maids hurried with bottles of warm milk. The nannies carried soft blankets, rocking chairs, and toys. Everyone tried something, anything, to stop the baby's endless wailing. But nothing worked. The baby screamed louder. Red-faced and restless, tiny fists clenched as if the world had already betrayed him. The rich woman, who had always been so confident, suddenly felt powerless. She took the baby in her arms, pacing back and forth across her grand bedroom, whispering soothing words. "Hush now, little one. Mother is here." Her voice trembled. She rocked the child, but the crying only grew more desperate, piercing her heart with every second. The servants exchanged nervous looks. They had never seen their mistress like this. She was always strong, untouchable, like a queen. But tonight, she looked fragile, her face pale and eyes wet with fear. Hours passed. The moon moved higher in the sky, but the cries did not fade. Doctors were called in haste. They came with their bags of medicine, stethoscopes, and calm expressions. They examined the child, checking his heartbeat, his temperature, his breathing. "The baby is perfectly healthy," one doctor said, shaking his head in confusion. "There is no illness here." "Then why won't he stop crying?" the mother demanded, her voice sharp with fear. No one had an answer. The mansion, once so proud and silent, was now filled with a storm of sound. Every wall carried the baby's endless cry, and every corner seemed to shiver with unease. The woman looked around at her wealth, her golden mirrors, her velvet curtains, her diamond jewelry scattered on the dresser. All the things she had collected with money, all the things she believed gave her power. None of it mattered now. None of it could silence her child. Her chest tightened. For the first time, she felt helpless in her own home. The servants tried to distract her with comfort. "Madam, perhaps the baby will sleep soon. Perhaps it is only a phase." But the mother shook her head. She could feel something deeper in the child's cries. It was not hunger. It was not sickness. It was something else, something she could not understand. Minutes turned into hours. The mother's footsteps grew heavy as she carried the baby across the room again and again. The night was endless, and then for just a moment, the baby's cries paused. His tiny head turned as if listening to something outside the tall windows. His body stilled, eyes wide, ears reaching for a sound that no one else noticed. The mother frowned. She turned her head, listening carefully. Outside the mansion, beyond the gates, a faint sound floated through the night. A voice, a melody. It was a song, not the polished kind sung by choirs or the trained voices she had heard at parties. No, this voice was raw. It was simple, gentle, and filled with something she couldn't name. It was coming from the street. Her baby cooed softly for the first time all night. The woman froze. "What is that sound?" she whispered. The servants looked at one another, confused. One of them rushed to the window, peering out into the night. "There is a boy outside," Madame the servant said, surprised. "He is singing." The mother's eyes narrowed. A poor boy, singing outside her mansion at this hour? She almost wanted to order him away. This was her home, her world she didn't let strangers near. But then, her baby's lips curved into a tiny smile. The crying stopped completely. The mother gasped. The boy's voice was soft but steady. He sang as if the night itself was his stage. His clothes were torn, his hair messy, and his feet bare against the cold street. Yet his song carried something richer than all the jewels in the mansion. The mother's heart pounded. She looked at her baby, who now rested quietly in her arms, his breathing soft and peaceful. The crying had stopped. She turned back to the window, her eyes fixed on the poor boy. Who was he? Why did his song hold such power? For the first time in her life, the rich woman realized that her wealth meant nothing in this moment. No amount of money, no doctor, no servant could do what this poor boy's voice had just done. Her world of control was broken, and outside her mansion, a stranger's song carried the answer. The night stretched on, and the grand mansion seemed to tremble under the endless weight of sound. The cries had returned. The brief silence brought by the mysterious boy's song faded as the voice outside grew distant. The baby's wails once again filled every corridor, louder than before. The wealthy woman clutched her child tightly. Her eyes, once filled with pride and control, now held only fear and exhaustion. She whispered to the baby again and again, rocking him gently in her arms. "Please, my love. Please be calm." Her words broke apart as tears rolled down her cheeks. She was a woman known for her strength, powerful in business, respected in society, feared by her servants. But in that moment, none of it mattered. In that moment, she was only a mother, desperate and helpless. The servants moved anxiously around her, carrying bottles of warm milk, toys, and soothing oils. Each one tried to help in their own way. One nanny sang lullabies, her voice trembling as she tried to match the baby's cries. Another servant brought a rocking cradle, hoping its gentle swaying would calm the child. Yet nothing worked. The baby's wailing cut through every attempt like a blade. The woman pressed the baby to her chest, trying to shield him from the world, but the sound only grew sharper. His small body trembled, his face red with strain, his fists clenched tightly. She could feel his heart racing against her skin. "What is wrong with you, my child?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "Why won't you rest? Why won't you let your mother comfort you?" The doctors who had visited earlier had already left, shaking their heads in defeat. They had told her the baby was perfectly healthy, but she could not believe it. No healthy child cried like this. No healthy child looked so restless. She felt the walls of the mansion closing in on her. The glittering chandeliers, the polished mirrors, the golden furniture, the wealth she had worked so hard to build suddenly seemed useless. She could trade all of it for just a few minutes of her child's peace. The sound of her baby's crying filled her ears until it was all she could hear. It drowned out her thoughts, her heartbeat, even her prayers. The servants whispered among themselves in the hallway. Their voices were low, but the woman could still catch fragments. Perhaps it is a curse, or perhaps the child feels lonely. No, no. It must be a sickness the doctors cannot see. The whispers grew like shadows in the corners of the house. Feeding the mother's fear, she pressed her hand to her forehead. She had faced business rivals, scandals, and betrayals before. She had built her empire with sharp decisions and cold logic. But tonight, none of her power mattered. Tonight, she was simply powerless. The baby's cries grew so loud that her chest ached, as though the sound had pierced through her body. She felt her knees weaken, and she collapsed into a velvet chair, still holding the child close. Her eyes drifted to the window, the same window where she had first heard the boy's voice. She remembered the strange peace that had settled over her child when that voice had filled the night air. For a moment, she almost called out for him, almost ordered the guards to bring the boy back. But then pride pulled her back. How could she, a woman of such wealth and power, depend on a street child to calm her baby? How could she allow a stranger, a poor boy in torn clothes, to enter her world of gold and diamonds? No, she whispered to herself. It cannot be him. I can do this. I must do this. Yet deep inside, her heart trembled with doubt. The hours dragged on. The clock struck midnight, then 1, then 2. Still the child cried. Still the mother walked the same path across her vast bedroom floor. Her steps growing slower, heavier, weaker. Her once perfect hair now clung to her damp face. Her silk gown was wrinkled. Her eyes burned from tears and sleeplessness. Please, she begged softly to her child. Please, just a moment of peace. Just one moment of silence, but the cries went on. The servants brought warm cloths for her tired arms. They offered to take the baby, to let her rest. But she refused every time. No, she said firmly, though her voice trembled. He is mine. My baby needs me. And so she held him, even when her body screamed for rest. Even when her strength was gone, she refused to let go. The night seemed endless, a tunnel with no light at the end. Every second felt like an hour, every cry like a knife cutting into her soul. And then, just as the clock struck 3, something strange happened. The baby paused. His cries softened for only a second. As though he had heard something again, his tiny head turned toward the window. His eyes widened, searching for a sound only he could hear. The mother froze. Her heart pounded as she listened carefully. Silence, but then, faintly, almost like a dream. She thought she heard it, the same gentle melody she had heard before. The poor boy was singing again. His voice carried through the night air. Soft and steady, filled with warmth and sorrow. It was not perfect. It was not trained. But it was real. It was alive. The baby stopped crying completely. His tiny hands relaxed, his breathing slowed, and his eyes began to close. The woman stared at her child in disbelief. The relief that washed over her was so powerful she almost collapsed. She looked back at the window, tears filling her eyes. Who was this boy? Why did his song hold such power over her baby? And why, with all her money and power, could she not do what he had done so easily? She felt a shiver run through her body, not of fear, but of realization. Perhaps the boy was more than he seemed. Perhaps. He was the key to her child's peace. The night sky stretched like a dark blanket over the city. Stars glimmered faintly, and the moon poured silver light across the tall mansion walls. Inside, the wealthy woman's world was breaking apart. Her baby had cried for hours, and her arms felt heavy as stone. Her feet dragged with exhaustion as she paced across the grand bedroom floor. The golden mirrors reflected a woman who no longer looked like a queen, but a mother in despair. And then it happened again. The baby suddenly grew quiet. His small body stilled. His restless fists loosened. His red cheeks softened. The woman gasped, clutching him tighter. "What is it, my child?" She whispered. The baby turned his head, his tiny ears searching. His wide eyes gazed toward the tall glass windows that looked out onto the street. The woman followed his gaze. She held her breath, straining to listen. At first, all she could hear was silence. But slowly, faintly, a sound floated in, soft, broken, and strangely beautiful. A voice. It was the same voice she had heard earlier. Gentle. Carrying through the night air like a secret meant only for her baby. The poor boy was singing again. Outside the mansion gates, where the stone walls met the cold ground, a thin figure stood barefoot. His clothes were torn and faded. His hair was messy. His hands were scratched and rough from a life of struggle. But his voice was something else. He sang not with perfection, but with heart. Every note carried sorrow, as though he had lost more than a child his age should lose. Every word carried warmth, as though he poured his soul into the night. The baby listened. The baby felt it. For the first time in hours, the little child smiled. His small mouth curved upward, his eyes softened, and he leaned against his mother's chest, calm at last. The woman froze, her own heart skipping a beat. The mansion, which had been filled with screams and chaos, now stood in peace. The servants peered from behind doors and curtains, their mouths open in shock. "It's him," one whispered. "The street boy." Another said softly. The woman's chest tightened. She had spent her whole life building walls of money, walls of power, walls of pride. No one entered her home without her permission. No one touched her world unless she allowed it. And yet, here was a boy an outsider. A nobody reaching her child without even stepping inside. She pressed her lips together, torn between gratitude and anger. How could her baby respond to a poor stranger and not to her? How could a voice from the street succeed where her wealth had failed? The boy's song drifted higher, filling the air like a blanket of comfort. The baby's breathing grew steady. His eyelids fluttered closed. The woman could feel her own tears rising. Relief washed over her body, but pride burned inside her chest. "Bring him here," she whispered suddenly. The servants blinked in surprise. "Madam." "You heard me," she said firmly, though her voice trembled. "Bring the boy inside." Now, the guards hesitated. It was unheard of. Never had a beggar, a poor boy in rags, been invited past the iron gates of the mansion. But no one dared question their mistress in her fragile state. The heavy gates creaked open. The sound echoed down the street. The boy stopped singing mid-note, startled. He looked up, his eyes wide and uncertain. He had never been this close to such a grand house. The mansion looked like a palace to him, a place that did not belong in his world. One guard stepped forward. "The madam wishes to see you." The boy's throat tightened. He wanted to run. What business did a poor boy have inside such a place? Yet something in the guard's tone, something in the stillness of the night, pulled him forward. He stepped hesitantly through the gates, his bare feet pressing against the cold stone path. The walls rose tall around him, making him feel even smaller. His heart pounded with fear. Inside, the wealthy woman held her sleeping child, her eyes locked on the doorway. She had no idea who this boy was. No idea why his song had reached her baby's heart. But she knew she needed to find out. The door opened slowly, and the boy was led inside. The servants stared. Their faces showed disbelief, disgust, curiosity. Some whispered to one another, their voices filled with suspicion. "Why him? He is dirty. He doesn't belong here. What if he brings bad luck?" But the woman silenced them with a glance. The boy stepped into the grand hall. His eyes darted around, wide with awe. The marble floors, the golden chandeliers, the silk curtains, it was a world he had only ever seen from far away. He felt out of place, like a shadow in a house of light. And yet, the baby stirred softly in his mother's arms, as if sensing the boy's presence. The woman saw it. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked at the boy, studying him. His face was tired, his body thin, but his eyes carried something deep, something painful but pure. "What is your name?" she asked quietly. The boy hesitated, his voice shaking. "David, madam?" Her lips pressed together. The name was simple, ordinary, yet somehow it carried weight in the silence of the mansion. "Why were you singing outside my home?" she asked. David lowered his gaze. I sing every night, madam. It helps me forget hunger. It helps me remember my sister. She used to cry at night too, and I would sing until she slept." The woman's heart skipped. A sister. A loss hidden in the boy's voice. Her baby shifted again, his tiny hands stretching toward the boy as if reaching for him. The woman's breath caught. For the first time, she realized this was no accident. There was something in the boy's song, something no money could buy, no doctor could explain. It was love. It was pain. It was real. Her pride battled with her fear. Should she let this stranger near her child? Should she trust him? The baby's soft breathing answered for her. The heavy air inside the mansion seemed to hold its breath as the poor boy stood in the grand hall. The golden chandeliers sparkled above him, but he kept his eyes lowered, afraid to look too long at the riches around him. His bare feet pressed against the cold marble floor, and his small hands twisted nervously in front of him. The wealthy woman sat in her tall velvet chair, holding her baby close. The child was calm now, his tiny chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. But she knew the peace would not last. She had seen it too many times tonight. At any moment, the cries could return loud enough to shake the house again. Her eyes narrowed at the boy. His face was pale, his clothes worn and dirty, yet there was something unusual about him. Something quiet. Something that didn't fit with the image of a beggar. The servants stood scattered around the room, her eyes full of suspicion. None of them trusted the boy. Some crossed their arms, others whispered to one another. Their world was built on rules. Those rules never included allowing someone like him inside. But the baby shifted in his mother's arms. His tiny head turned toward the boy as though he already knew who had brought him peace. The woman noticed. Her heart pounded in her chest. Could it really be true? Could this stranger's song be the only thing that calmed her child? She took a deep breath, her voice sharp but trembling. Sing. The boy froze. His eyes flicked up, wide and uncertain. Madam? He asked softly. Sing, she repeated more firmly this time. Do what you did outside. Here, now. The room went silent. Every servant stared. The boy hesitated, his throat tightening. His voice had always been his secret, something he used to comfort himself at night. Singing in front of others, especially in a mansion like this, felt impossible. But then his eyes fell on the baby. The small child looked at him with innocent wonder, as if waiting. David swallowed hard. Slowly, he opened his mouth, and the sound slipped out soft at first, almost a whisper. A melody filled the air. The sound was fragile, broken, yet beautiful in its own way. It wasn't polished like the voices of trained singers. It wasn't powerful like the voices in churches or on stages. But it was real. It was filled with something no one could deny, sincerity. The baby reacted instantly. His tiny lips curved into a smile. His restless hands relaxed. His eyes fluttered closed, and he leaned against his mother's chest, completely at peace. The woman gasped. Tears filled her eyes. She looked down at her baby, then back at the boy. Disbelief written all over her face. The servants murmured in shock. It's true. One whispered, The baby listens to him. Another said, stunned. The boy's voice grew steadier as he sang, finding courage in the calm that spread through the room. Every note seemed to wrap around the child like a blanket. Even the servants felt the tension in their bodies ease as the melody filled the mansion. The wealthy woman's heart ached. She had tried everything: money, doctors, toys, medicines, lullabies, but nothing had worked. Yet here was a boy with nothing to his name, doing what no one else could. When the song ended, silence filled the hall once again. But it was a peaceful silence, not the heavy silence of despair from before. The baby was asleep. The woman stared at the boy, her lips trembling. She wanted to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Pride and gratitude wrestled inside her chest. Finally, she whispered, How did you do that? David lowered his head. I don't know, madam. I only sing the way I always have. My sister, she used to cry at night, and I sang until she fell asleep, I suppose. I just sang with my heart. His voice cracked as he spoke of his sister. Pain flickered in his eyes. The woman's chest tightened. For a moment, she saw something in him, a reflection of her own love, her own desperation. But the servants were not convinced. This is dangerous, one muttered. What if he brings harm to the child? He is only a street boy, another added. He doesn't belong here. The whispers grew louder. Fear and suspicion filled the room again. The woman's eyes darted around. Her pride screamed at her to send the boy away, to protect her world from outsiders. But her heart told her something different. Her baby needed him. She looked at the boy again. His eyes were downcast, his body small, his voice quiet. He did not look dangerous. He looked lonely. The baby stirred slightly, as if sensing the tension. His mother held him tighter, afraid he would wake and cry again. Her decision weighed heavy on her chest. Would she let this boy stay? Would she risk her pride, her reputation, her carefully built life fall for the peace of her child? The servants waited. The boy waited. The mansion itself seemed to wait. The woman closed her eyes, her tears falling silently. Stay, she whispered finally. Gasps filled the room. The boy's head shot up in shock. Madame. Stay here tonight, she said firmly, though her voice trembled. You will sing if he cries again. You will not leave until I say so. The servants exchanged horrified glances, but none dared to argue. The decision had been made. The boy nodded slowly, his throat tight. Yes, madam. And so, for the first time in history, a poor street boy sat inside the mansion, his voice the only key to the peace of a child born into wealth. The woman held her sleeping baby. Her mind spinning, she had no idea who this boy truly was. No idea why his song had such power. But she knew one thing, this was only the beginning. The mansion had never felt so divided. On one side was Peace the baby sleeping softly in his mother's arms, his breathing steady, his face calm for the first time in many nights. On the other side was tension, the servants whispering in fear. Suspicion hanging in the air like a heavy cloud. At the center of it all stood the poor boy. David, he kept his head lowered, his hands folded tightly in front of him, afraid to even breathe too loudly in the golden hall. The chandeliers above him sparkled like stars, but he felt like a shadow among them. He didn't belong here and he knew it. Yet, the baby had chosen him. The wealthy woman sat on her velvet chair, holding her child close, her mind spinning in 1,000 directions. She had made her decision in desperation, ordering the boy to stay. But now, as silence returned to the mansion, doubt crept in. Had she done the right thing? Her servants' eyes were sharp with judgment. They didn't need to speak. Their faces said everything. In their world, rich and poor did not mix. Bringing a boy from the streets into the heart of her home was not only strange, it was dangerous, madam. One servant finally spoke, her voice soft but heavy with concern. You cannot trust him. He is no one. What if he steals? What if he lies? What if he brings shame to this house? The woman's lips pressed together. She wanted to silence them, to defend her decision. But her pride made it difficult. She was not used to explaining herself. Instead, she looked down at her baby. His tiny hand rested gently on her arm, his face peaceful. Her heart softened. No one else had been able to do this. Not the doctors, not the nannies, not even she herself. Only this boy. Her voice broke the silence. He stays, she said firmly. Gasps spread across the room. Some servants lowered their heads in obedience, but others glared in quiet disapproval. David's heart pounded. He had never expected to step inside the mansion, let alone be allowed to stay. He felt both grateful and afraid. What if they were right? What if he didn't belong here? The woman turned her gaze toward him. You will remain in this house. When the child cries, you will sing. You will not wander. You will not speak unless spoken to. Do you understand? David nodded quickly. Yes, madam. Her words were sharp, but beneath them was something else, a hidden fear. She was risking everything by letting him stay. The night stretched on, and silence wrapped around the mansion once more. But the peace was fragile. Hanging by a thread, David was given a small corner near the servants' quarters, a place barely large enough for him to sit. It was nothing compared to the grand bedrooms filled with velvet curtains and golden lamps, but to him it felt like more than he had ever had. As he sat quietly, he thought of his sister. He remembered her small face, her weak body, the way she had clung to his hand at night. Singing had been his only gift to her, the only thing he could give when food and comfort were scarce. But she was gone now. His song was all he had left. And now, strangely, it was what had brought him here. Meanwhile, the wealthy woman lay in her bed, but sleep did not come. She stared at the ceiling, her mind restless. She thought of the neighbors. What would they say if they knew? They already watched her with envy, some with bitterness. If they discovered she had invited a beggar boy into her home, the whispers would never end. She thought of her reputation. She had built her life on power, on respect. Every detail of her world was perfect. How could she explain this decision? But then her eyes drifted to the crib beside her bed. Her baby slept soundly, his tiny lips curved in a faint smile. For the first time in weeks there was peace. her heart ached. She knew she could not take that away, not for pride, not for reputation. The next morning, the mansion buzzed with quiet gossip. The servants moved carefully, but their whispers filled the halls. Why him? This is not right. She trusts him more than us. The wealthy woman ignored them. She dressed in her finest gown, but her mind was still on the boy. She summoned him to the hall. David entered, nervous, his head bowed. She studied him for a long moment. Tell me, she said slowly, why does my child listen to you? David hesitated. I don't know, madam. I only sing the way I always have. When my sister was alive, she cried often. Singing was the only thing that helped her. Maybe your baby hears the same comfort in my voice. The woman's chest tightened. She wanted to ask more about his sister, but she stopped herself. She didn't want to show weakness in front of him. Instead, she nodded once. You will continue. As long as my child needs you, you will stay here. David lowered his head. Thank you, madam. But as he turned to leave, a servant stepped forward boldly. Madame, forgive me, but this is not safe. He is from the streets. We know nothing of him. What if he harms the child? What if this piece is only a trick? The hall went silent. All eyes turned to the mistress of the house. Her pride burned. She hated being questioned. Yet deep inside, she felt the same fear. What if she was wrong? What if she had invited danger into her home? She looked at her baby again. The child had woken but remained calm, his eyes wide and curious. When he saw the boy, his tiny face lit up with joy. The decision was made in that moment. The woman's voice was cold but steady. I will risk it. Her words shocked the servants. She had never spoken such a thing before. Risk was not a word in her world of perfection. Yet here she was, choosing it for the sake of her child. David froze, his chest tightening. No one had ever risked anything for him before. The wealthy woman stood tall, her eyes sweeping across the room. This boy stays. He may have nothing, but he has given my child what no one else could peace. Until I say otherwise, he is part of this house. The servants bowed reluctantly. The matter was settled for now, but whispers followed David wherever he walked. Some servants avoided him. Others watched him closely, their eyes sharp with suspicion. He could feel their doubt pressing against him like a weight. Still, when the baby cried again, he sang. And every time, the baby calmed. As if the sound of his voice carried magic, the wealthy woman watched in silence. Torn between wonder and fear, she had made her decision. A risky one. But was it the right one? The golden doors of the mansion closed with a heavy sound behind David, sealing his fate. He was no longer standing outside in the cold night air, but inside a world so different from his own that it felt almost unreal. The walls glittered, the golden frames and shining lamps. The floors were polished like mirrors, reflecting the light of the great chandeliers above. To David, it looked like something from a dream. His bare feet felt out of place against the marble floor. The servants walked around him, their faces stiff and suspicious. Some refused to meet his eyes. Others stared openly, as if waiting for him to make a mistake. David kept his head bowed, clutching his hands together. He knew one wrong move could send him back to the streets, but then his eyes turned toward the baby. The little one lay in a soft cradle near his mother's side. Unlike before, he was not crying. His small hands waved in the air, his eyes wide and curious. And when David softly began to hum, the baby's lips curved into a tiny smile. The wealthy woman's chest rose and fell in relief. Her lips trembled, though she tried to hide it. For weeks, she had begged doctors, prayed in silence, and shouted at servants. Nothing had worked. Yet this boy, the stranger, had done what no one else could. But pride kept her from showing too much gratitude. Instead, she straightened her back and spoke in a cold, careful voice. You will sit here, she ordered, pointing to a chair near the cradle. When my child cries, you will sing. Do not wander. Do not touch anything. Do not forget your place. David nodded quickly. Yes, madam. His voice was small, but his heart was heavy. He understood. He was not family here, not even a servant. He was something else entirely, an outsider allowed, only for one purpose. The woman's eyes lingered on him for a moment longer before she turned away. But deep inside, she felt something she could not admit. Without this boy, she would still be drowning in sleepless nights and helpless tears. Without him, her baby would still be suffering. That truth scared her more than anything. The hours passed slowly. David sat quietly in his chair, his head low, his voice ready at any moment. Whenever the baby stirred, he sang softly. His songs were not grand or trained, they were simple, gentle tunes filled with warmth, and every time the baby listened, his cries faded, his body relaxed. Sleep came easily. The servants watched in silence. Some exchanged worried looks. Others whispered behind his back. "This is strange," one muttered. "Too strange," another replied. No one should have that kind of power over the child. The whispers reached the wealthy woman's ears. But she ignored them. Still, in the privacy of her thoughts, she wondered too. Why this boy? Why his voice? Later that evening, when the baby slept peacefully, she ordered a meal to be served. David was not invited to the dining hall. Instead, a small plate was placed on a tray and set down in front of him in the servants' quarters. The food was plain compared to the dishes on her golden table. But to David, it felt like a feast. He had gone many nights hungry, surviving on scraps or nothing at all. Now he had bread, soup, and even a piece of fruit. He whispered a quiet thank you before eating, though no one was there to hear. Yet even as he ate, he could feel the eyes of the other servants on him. Their glares were sharp, their voices bitter. He does not belong here. He is only trouble. Mark my words, this will not end. Well, David lowered his head and said nothing. He knew speaking back would only make things worse. Meanwhile, the wealthy woman sat alone in her grand dining hall. The chandeliers glowed above her, the silverware shone. But her heart was restless. She had built her life on control, every detail in her house, every servant, every decision. But this boy had shaken that control. He was poor, unknown, uninvited. Yet now, her baby depended on him. Her thoughts twisted between fear and gratitude. She wanted to protect her child, but she also wanted to protect her pride. Could she do both? That night, as the baby stirred again, David sang softly, his voice carrying through the room. The wealthy woman stood in the doorway, watching quietly. She saw the way her baby's face softened, the way his breathing grew calm, the way peace returned, for the first time. She noticed something else too, the boy's face, when he sang. His eyes softened, and though his voice was quiet, it carried something deep, something almost painful. It was not just a song. It was love. The woman's chest tightened. She wanted to ask, "Who taught you to sing this way? Why does your voice sound like sorrow and comfort at the same time?" But pride stopped her words. She turned and walked away before he noticed she was watching. Days began to pass. The boy remained near the baby, singing whenever needed. Slowly, the child began to laugh, to smile, to sleep longer hours. His little hands reached out whenever David sang, as if clinging to the sound. The servants could not deny it, the boy's presence was working. But their distrust only grew stronger. "He has cast a spell," one said. "No, it is a trick. He must want something. What if the mistress cannot see it? What if she is blind to the danger?" The whispers turned sharper, colder. One evening, as David sat near the cradle, the wealthy woman finally asked the question that had been heavy on her mind. "Why does your song sound so heavy?" she asked quietly, her voice low so the servants would not hear. David hesitated. His eyes dropped to the floor. "It is because my heart is heavy, madam," he said softly. "I used to sing for my sister. She was very sick. Singing was the only thing that helped her sleep. She is gone now. But when I sing, it feels like she is still with me." The woman's breath caught. For a moment, she saw not a beggar boy, not an intruder, but a brother who had loved deeply and lost painfully. Her lips parted, but no words came. She turned her head quickly, hiding the emotion in her eyes. "That is enough," she said coldly, though her heart felt anything but cold. That night, she could not sleep. The boy's words echoed in her mind. She thought of her own baby, safe in the cradle. What if she lost him too? Could she bear the pain this boy had lived through? Her heart softened, but her pride remained. She told herself she had only brought him here for the child's sake. Nothing more. Nothing less. Yet deep down, a small seed of respect had been planted. The mansion was no longer the same. The servants watched him with suspicion. The mother struggled with pride and gratitude. The boy carried his grief in silence. And in the middle of it all, the baby innocent, pure-itched for the boy's voice, as if it were the only light in his world. The wealthy woman had made her risky decision. Now, inside her mansion, the true test had begun. The mansion was no longer filled with the sound of endless crying. Instead, it now echoed with soft lullabies, carried by the poor boy's voice. Peace returned to the golden halls, but not everyone welcomed it. The baby slept better. The mother breathed easier. But the servants, those who had served the house for years, were restless. Their whispers grew louder each day, like snakes sliding through the corners of the great mansion. Whispers in the shadows one morning. While David sat quietly near the cradle, humming softly. Two servants stood in the hallway just outside. "This is wrong," one hissed. "How can Madam let a boy like him into our mistress's home? He is a street beggar." The other servant leaned closer, lowering her voice. "You saw it too. The child listens only to him. It is not natural. Perhaps it is. Something dark." David's ears caught fragments of their words. He lowered his head, pretending not to hear. But his heart ached. He had done nothing but sing, yet already they feared him. Inside the nursery, the wealthy woman noticed the boy's downcast face. "What is it?" she asked sharply. David shook his head quickly. "Nothing, madam." But she knew. She had seen the servants' stares, heard their whispers when they thought she wasn't listening. Their loyalty was to her, but their suspicion was toward him. Still, pride made her say nothing. The fire of jealousy by the afternoon, the gossip had spread like wildfire among the staff. Some whispered that David was dangerous. Others whispered something else, that perhaps the mistress trusted him more than she trusted her own servants. One maid clenched her fists as she polished the silverware. "We have served her for years," she spat quietly, "and yet she looks at him as if he is more valuable than us. A beggar boy. Can you believe it?" Another nodded. "If this continues, soon he will take our place. He may even replace us all." Jealousy, sharp and bitter, began to eat away at their hearts. A silent watcher, that evening, as David sang once more, the wealthy woman sat in her chair, watching her baby's peaceful face. For a brief moment, a smile touched her lips. She felt grateful, though she did not speak it aloud. But she also noticed the shadows at the doorway, servants standing too long. Their eyes cold and sharp, their whispers quick. As soon as she looked away, she clenched her jaw. She had never allowed defiance in her home. Yet now, she was letting whispers grow. Why? Because deep inside, she was unsure too. The question laid into the night. One of her most trusted servants finally spoke boldly. "Madam," the woman said carefully, bowing low, "forgive me, but this boy. Do you truly trust him?" The mistress's eyes narrowed. "And why should I not?" The servant hesitated. "Because no one knows him. We do not know his past. We do not know his intentions. What if his song is not a gift, but a trap?" The room fell silent. Even the fire in the hearth seemed to crackle more softly. The mistress wanted to dismiss the words as foolish, but part of her chest tightened with doubt. What if? She turned to look at her baby, sleeping soundly, his small fingers curled. She whispered almost to herself, "But he is calm now. He is safe now." The servant lowered her head, but did not argue further. Still, her doubt remained heavy in the air. David's burden, meanwhile. David lay awake in the corner of the servants' quarters. The bed was thin, the blanket rough, but he did not complain. He stared at the ceiling, thinking of the whispers, the stares, the coldness around him. He had not come here to cause trouble. He had not asked for riches or respect. He had only sung because the baby cried, "Why do they hate me?" He whispered into the dark. He remembered his sister again, her weak little body, her tired smile when he sang. He remembered holding her hand the night she took her last breath. That memory gave his voice sorrow and warmth. But here, among strangers, that same voice made people afraid. A tear slid down his cheek. He quickly wiped it away. A night of testing the next night, the baby cried louder than usual. The wealthy woman rushed to the cradle, her heart racing. Nothing worked, not rocking, not patting, not the doctor's medicines. She looked desperately toward the boy. "Sing," she ordered. David stepped forward and began his gentle tune. At once, the baby quieted, his cries turning into soft whimpers, then into steady breathing. Relief washed over the mother. But in the corner of her eye, she saw her servants stiffen, their suspicion deepening. One whispered, "You see? It is unnatural." Another muttered, "He has bewitched the child." The words stung. Even though they were spoken low, the wealthy woman's face hardened. She would not show weakness in front of her staff. "Silence," she ordered coldly. "The boy stays." The servants bowed, but their eyes burned with silent defiance. The breaking point the following day. Tension exploded. While David was carrying a tray of water to the nursery, one of the older servants blocked his path. Her eyes were sharp, her voice bitter. "Why are you really here, boy?" she hissed. "Do you think you will replace us? Do you think the mistress will make you part of this house?" David shook his head quickly. "No, ma'am. I only sing for the baby. That is all." But the servant sneered. "Lies. You want her trust. You want her wealth, but you will never be one of us. Never." Her words cut deep, sharper than any blade. David's throat tightened, but he said nothing. He simply lowered his head and walked past. The servant's eyes followed him, filled with jealousy and hate. The mistress decides that evening, the wealthy woman sat alone in her chamber. Her thoughts twisted in chaos. She had once been sure of everything: her home, her servants, her life. But now, doubt lived in every corner. Her servants doubted the boy. The boy doubted himself, and she doubted her own judgment. But when she looked at her child, peacefully sleeping, she knew only one truth. The boy's song was the reason for this peace. And so, for the second time, she made a decision that shocked everyone. She stood before her staff the next morning, her voice steady and cold. "The boy remains. He has done nothing but bring peace to this house. Anyone who questions my decision questions me. Do you understand?" The servants bowed reluctantly. Some lowered their eyes in shame, but others clenched their fists in anger. The doubt had not ended. It had only gone deeper, hiding in the shadows, waiting to strike. A silent promise that night. David sat near the cradle once more. The baby's small hand reached out toward him, fingers curling around his own. David's eyes softened. He whispered a promise so quietly that only he could hear. "I will not harm you. I will protect you." No matter what, he did not know the dangers waiting ahead, or how deep the servant's doubts would grow. But in that moment, he knew one thing. He was no longer singing only for his sister's memory. He was singing for this child too. The mansion stood silent that night. Peace rested over the baby, but unease spread among the servants and the wealthy woman. Though firm in her words, felt fear growing in her heart. Had she made the right choice? Or had her decision invited trouble that no song could quiet? The mansion's silence was deceptive. On the surface, peace had returned. The baby slept soundly most nights. The mother's fear was less. The boy's song filled the golden halls like a quiet prayer. But beneath that peace, doubt spread like poison. The servants' whispers grew sharper, their suspicions heavier. And in the heart of it all stood David, carrying secrets that no one in the mansion yet knew. A question in the night one evening. After the baby had finally drifted into deep sleep, the wealthy woman lingered by the cradle. The soft glow of the lamp made shadows dance across the nursery walls. David sat quietly in his chair, his hands folded in his lap. He thought the woman was about to leave, as she always did, once her child was calm. But tonight, she remained, her eyes fixed on him. "Tell me, boy," she said softly, though her tone was sharp. "Who are you, really?" David froze. His heart began to race. He had hoped no one would ask. I am no one, madam," he said quickly. "Just a poor boy from the streets." But the woman's eyes narrowed. "No one. No child grows up from nowhere. You have a past. You have a family. Where are they?" David swallowed hard. Memories flashed in his mind. The small, broken house. His mother's tired face. His father's absence. His little sister's weak smile. He wanted to speak, but his throat tightened. "They are gone," he whispered finally. The woman leaned closer. "Gone? What do you mean?" David's hands trembled. "My mother died when I was young. My father left us long before that. I had only my sister. But she was sick. I sang to her every night. It was the only thing that kept her calm. But one night, she closed her eyes and never woke up." His voice broke. He lowered his head, ashamed of his tears. For the first time, the wealthy woman said nothing. She had lived her whole life surrounded by comfort. But his words painted a world she had never seen, one of hunger, loss, and loneliness. Her chest tightened. She wanted to say something, but pride held her back. Instead, she turned away, her face hidden in shadow. "That is enough," she said coldly. "Speak no more of it," but inside. Her heart was not cold at all. Servants' curiosity. The next morning, the servants noticed something different. The mistress was quieter, more thoughtful. Her eyes lingered on the boy longer than before. Jealousy flared among them. "He has told her something." One servant whispered. "Perhaps a lie," another sneered. "He is tricking her, I am sure of it." Their suspicion grew into curiosity. They wanted to know who this boy really was, where he had come from, and why he had such power over the mistress's heart. An old memory later that week. An older servant, one who had worked in the mansion longer than anyone else, watched David carefully. Her eyes narrowed as she studied his face. "There's something familiar about him," she murmured. "What do you mean?" Another servant asked. The old woman shook her head slowly. "Years ago, a poor family used to live near this estate. The father worked here briefly, before he was dismissed for stealing food. The mother begged for mercy, but the mistress of the house at that time, she showed none." Her voice dropped. "That family disappeared into the streets. I remember a little boy and a sickly girl. The boy had the same eyes." The servants gasped. Could it be true? Could this boy be the child of that disgraced family? If so, then his return to the mansion was not chance, it was fate. Doubts grew stronger that night. The whispers reached the wealthy woman herself. One servant, braver than the rest, dared to speak. "Madam, you must know," she said quietly. "This boy may not be who he seems. Some say he is the son of thieves. Some say his family was cast out from this very house." The mistress froze. Her chest tightened at the words. Could it be true? Had she unknowingly brought back the child of disgrace into her mansion? She turned her gaze toward David, who sat near the cradle, humming softly. The baby's face glowed with peace. Her mind battled with itself. If he is the son of thieves, can I trust him? But if he is innocent, how can I turn him away when my child needs him so deeply? The question clawed at her heart, refusing to let go. David's truth later. When the baby slept and the servants had left, the mistress returned to the nursery. Her face was sharp, her voice cutting. "Tell me the truth," she demanded. "Was your family ever connected to this house?" David's eyes widened. His heart pounded. "Yes," he whispered finally. "My father worked here long ago. He was dismissed. After that, everything fell apart. We lost everything. My mother begged for help, but none came. We were left to suffer alone." Tears welled in his eyes, but he forced himself to continue. "I do not want revenge. I do not want anything but to sing. That is all I have left." The room fell silent. The wealthy woman's face stiffened. She had not been mistress of the house at that time. It had been her late mother-in-law. But still, the guilt of the past weighed heavily on her shoulders. She turned away, hiding her turmoil. "You will stay," she said coldly, though her voice trembled slightly. David bowed his head. "Thank you, madam." The servants fear when the servants heard of the mistress's decision. Their whispers turned to anger. "She trusts him even more now," one said bitterly. "She is blind," another hissed. "He is the child of disgrace. His family brought shame here once before. He will bring it again." Their fear began to twist into something darker hatred. A mother's conflict that night. The wealthy woman sat by the window of her grand chamber, staring out at the dark sky. Her child slept peacefully in the nursery. The boy remained in his place, loyal and quiet. But her heart was not at peace. She thought of her own pride, of the society that watched her every move. What would they say if they knew she had taken in the son of a disgraced family? Yet, when she thought of her baby, she knew she could not turn him away. The question haunted her: am I protecting my child or destroying everything I built? A night of tears in the servants' quarters. David lay awake again. The weight of the past pressed on him like a stone. He remembered his father's shame, his mother's tears, his sister's weak smile before she left the world, and now here he was, in the very house that had once rejected them. He whispered softly to himself, "I will not let history repeat. I will not bring harm here. I will only sing, only sing." His tears fell silently onto the rough blanket beneath him. The mansion was quiet that night, but beneath its golden beauty, secrets stirred. The boy's hidden past was no longer hidden, and though the mistress allowed him to stay, the whispers of fear had only grown louder. The fragile peace inside the mansion was beginning to crack. The mansion glowed with its usual beauty. Chandeliers shining like stars, golden walls reflecting light, but inside the heart of its mistress, there was no peace. The truth of the boy's past weighed on her like heavy chains. Every time she looked at him, she saw not just the poor child with a gift, but the shadow of a family once rejected, once disgraced, and yet her baby's peace was proof of his worth. Without his song, the cries would return. Without his presence, the silence of the mansion would once again be broken by endless screams. Her heart was torn in two directions, society's watchful eyes one afternoon. The wealthy woman sat in her grand drawing room. A group of her high society friends had come to visit, dressed in silks and jewels, their voices sharp with curiosity. They admired her child, who rested quietly in the cradle nearby. "He is so calm," one woman remarked. "Tell me, what secret medicine did you use?" "My own child cries endlessly at night." Another lady leaned closer, her eyes curious. "Yes, tell us. Everyone is speaking about how peaceful your home has become. What miracle is this?" The mistress smiled faintly, but her heart raced. She could not tell them the truth, not yet. "Perhaps it is only God's grace," she said carefully, but their eyes lingered on the boy, who sat quietly in the corner, his head bowed. One of the women whispered, "Is that not the poor boy you keep here?" How strange. To have such a child in a place like this. The words stabbed like knives. The mistress's pride flared, but she stayed silent inside, however. A storm began to rise, alone with doubt that night. When her guests had left and the house grew quiet, she sat by the nursery window. The baby slept soundly, David's soft humming filling the room. Her thoughts battled fiercely. What will society say if they know the truth? Will they laugh at me? Will they call me weak? But then she looked at her child, his small chest rising and falling in peaceful sleep. She remembered the sleepless nights, the endless cries, the fear that something was wrong. It was this boy who had brought back peace, not her wealth, not her servants, not her pride. Her eyes softened, a mother's realization later. When David paused his humming, she spoke quietly. "Tell me, boy," she said, her voice softer than before. "Why do you stay? You owe me nothing. Why not run away and live your own life?" David looked at her, startled. "Because your child needs me," he answered simply. The words pierced her heart. They were not spoken with ambition, not with desire for money or comfort, but with sincerity. "Your child needs me," he repeated. "And maybe I need him to. When I sing, I remember my sister. It feels like she is alive again, through him. I do not want him to cry the way she did." The mistress's throat tightened. For the first time, she saw him not as a servant, not as the son of a disgraced family, but as a boy carrying heavy pinette, still giving light. Her pride melted slowly. Servants. Resistance but peace did not return so easily. The servants' whispers grew darker. They had heard of her guest's curiosity. They feared scandal. "He is dangerous," one servant hissed. "If society discovers who he really is, our mistress will be humiliated," another said. "We must do something. Before it is too late." Plans began to stir in their hearts. A test of loyalty the next evening while David sat by the cradle. One of the braver servants approached the mistress privately. "Madam," she said firmly, "you must choose, either the boy or your dignity. Keep him here, and soon everyone will know. They will mock you. They will ruin your name. Is that what you want?" The mistress's hands trembled, but her eyes remained cold. "My child sleeps peacefully because of him," she replied, "and that is all that matters." The servant was shocked. "But madam, enough." The mistress cut her off. "Leave." The servant left, her heart burning with anger. A quiet moment that night. As the house finally grew silent, the wealthy woman sat once more by her baby's side. David hummed his gentle song. The air was calm, the kind of calm that seemed to heal wounds deeper than anyone could see. And as she watched, realization fully bloomed in her heart. All her life, she had believed wealth could solve anything. She had believed that dignity was everything. Society's opinion mattered above all else. But in this small boy's song, she saw the truth. Wealth could not calm her baby. Status could not bring peace. Only love, sacrifice, and sincerity could do that. For the first time in years, tears welled in her eyes, not of pride, but of humility. She whispered softly, though David could not hear her words, "Perhaps God has sent you here, not only for my child, but for me." A decision in the dark, when David finally drifted to sleep in his small corner. The wealthy woman remained awake. She looked at her baby, then at the boy, then at the golden walls of her mansion. Her realization was clear. She would protect this boy, no matter what society thought. She would stand against the whispers, against the servants, against the pride of her world. For in protecting him, she was also protecting her child and herself. Her decision was made, but in the shadows, unknown to her, the servants' jealousy and anger were building into something far more dangerous. The mansion seemed peaceful on the surface. The baby slept calmly. David sang each night, and the wealthy woman carried herself with her usual grace. But beneath the golden walls, unrest grew like fire. The servants, once loyal, now carried heavy hearts filled with jealousy and fear. They whispered in corners, their voices sharp, their eyes full of suspicion. "Jealousy turns bitter. He has bewitched her," one servant hissed. "She trusts him more than us," another said bitterly. "Do you not see? The boy is dangerous. If people discover his past, the mistress will be ruined, and we will be ruined with her." The older servant, the one who remembered his family from years ago, nodded slowly. "We cannot let him stay. The mistress is blind with emotion. She does not see the danger, but we do." The servants exchanged glances, their minds racing. "What must we do?" one asked. The old woman's eyes darkened. "We must make him leave whether the mistress wishes it or not." The first attempt that night. As David walked toward his small room after singing the baby to sleep, two servants stepped in his path. "Boy," one said sharply, "you do not belong here." David looked down, his hands trembling. "I only want to help the baby." "Help." The other scoffed. "You bring shame. You are the son of thieves. You are dirt in a house of gold." David's heart pounded, but he stayed silent. "If you are wise," the first servant continued, You will leave before the mistress changes her mind. Leave and never return. David shook his head softly. The baby needs me. I cannot leave. Their faces hardened with anger. Then we will make you. But before they could do anything, the sound of soft cries filled the corridor the baby had woken. The servants froze. David rushed past them into the nursery. Within moments, his song filled the air, and the cries faded into calm. The servants stood in silence, their rage burning deeper than ever, seeds of hatred the next day. Their whispers grew darker. He will not leave willingly, one said. Then we must force him, another replied. How? A younger servant asked nervously. The mistress will protect him. The old woman leaned closer. Her voice was cold. We will not harm him directly. We will let suspicion do the work. We will make the mistress doubt him. We will make her see him as a threat. The others nodded slowly. A dangerous plan that night. The servants put their plan in motion. They began to hide small things around the house, silver spoons, jewelry, coins. They placed them carefully in places where suspicion would grow. Then, one by one, they whispered to the mistress. Madam, one said softly, something strange is happening. Small things are missing, another added. I fear it may be the boy. The mistress frowned. The boy. No, he would not. But the whispers continued, each day sharper, more convincing. Perhaps his family's blood runs in him, one servant said carefully. Once a thief, always a thief, another muttered. The wealthy woman tried to push the doubts away, but they began to gnaw at her. David's confusion, meanwhile, David felt the change in the air. The servants' stares were colder. Their whispers stopped when he entered a room. He did not understand why. One evening, he found a silver spoon hidden beneath his blanket. His heart froze. He rushed to return it to the kitchen, but the servants were already waiting. Caught? One shouted, pointing at him. David shook his head, panic in his voice. No, I did not take it. I swear. But their laughter was cruel. You think she will believe you? You are nothing but the son of thieves. Tears filled his eyes as he clutched the spoon. He wanted to run, to hide, but the sound of the baby's cry echoed through the hall. His fear vanished. Without another word, he rushed to the nursery, singing softly until the cries faded, even in his pain. He remembered his promise to never let the child cry alone. The mistress's doubt later that night. The mistress entered the nursery. She saw David sitting quietly, the baby asleep in his arms, but her mind was restless. The whispers of the servants haunted her. The missing silver. The talk of thieves. The spoon found in his room. She studied David's face, trying to read his soul. Could he be lying? Could he be deceiving her all along? Her heart said no. But her pride, her fear of society, whispered yes. A storm inside the wealthy woman walked back to her chamber. Her footsteps heavy, her thoughts battled fiercely. If he is innocent, sending him away will destroy my child's peace. But if he is guilty, keeping him here may destroy everything I built. Which truth can I believe? She sat by the window, the moonlight pouring in, her heart torn in half. David's prayer in his small corner. David knelt quietly. He did not pray for himself. He did not pray for safety or comfort. He prayed for the baby. God, let him never cry in pain. Let him never feel hunger the way my sister did. Let him always find peace even if I am gone. His tears fell silently onto the floor. The mansion was silent. But beneath its beauty, danger grew sharper. The servant's plan was working. Doubt had entered the mistress's heart, and soon. Their whispers would force her to make a choice that could break everything apart. The mansion was no longer at peace. Though the baby slept soundly most nights, the air inside the golden walls felt heavy. Whispers floated in every corner, carrying poison from servant to servant until the whole household seemed infected, and at the center of it all was David. He did nothing but sing. He kept his head low, obeyed every command, cared for the baby with the patience of a saint. But no matter what he did, suspicion followed him like a shadow. The final straw one morning, panic spread through the halls. A piece of fine jewelry, an emerald necklace worth more than some men's entire homes, was declared missing. The servants gasped loudly, their voices rising like thunder. "It is gone," one cried. "Stolen," another shouted. Within minutes, the entire mansion buzzed with noise. The mistress herself appeared, her face pale but stern. "Search everywhere," she ordered, and they did. Every drawer, every box, every corner of the great mansion was checked. But the necklace was nowhere to be found. Then one servant spoke softly, almost too softly. "Perhaps we should search the boys' room." The mistress's eyes flickered with unease. Her pride told her not to allow such insult. But her fear whispered louder. "Search it," she said at last. The discovery David's small corner held. Little, just a thin blanket, a wooden chair, and a few torn clothes. But beneath the blanket the servants gasped. There, gleaming against the rough fabric, was the emerald necklace. The room erupted with cries. "I knew it." One shouted, "A thief's son is always a thief." Another declared, "He has fooled us all." David's face drained of color. His legs shook. "No, no. I swear I did not take it. I do not know how it got there." But no one listened. The servants dragged him forward, their voices full of triumph. The mistress's heart brake. The wealthy woman stood frozen as the necklace was placed in her hand. Her heart thundered in her chest. David knelt before her, tears streaming down his face. "Madame, please, believe me. I did not take it. I would never steal." Her eyes wavered. His words carried the same innocence as always. But the evidence was undeniable. Her pride whispered cruelly, "Perhaps the servants were right all along. Perhaps he was using your child to gain your trust. Perhaps his family's shame still runs in his blood." She closed her eyes, torn apart. The baby's cry at that moment, the baby's sudden cry cut through the air. It was sharp, desperate, louder than it had been in weeks. The servants fell silent, all eyes turning to the cradle. David instinctively rushed toward the child, but two servants blocked his path. "No," they shouted. "You will not touch him again." The baby's cries grew louder, piercing, echoing through the golden halls. The wealthy woman's heart twisted in agony. She wanted to order the servants aside. She wanted to let David sing, but the necklace burned in her hand like fire, filling her with doubt. "Do I trust my heart, though the truth my eyes can see?" David's plead. David fell to his knees, his voice breaking. "Please, madam," he begged. "Let me calm him. I do not care what happens to me. Punish me. Send me away. But do not let your baby suffer. Let me sing just one last time." The mistress trembled. Her eyes darted between her child's tear-stained face and the boy's desperate eyes. The servants pressed closer, their voices harsh. "Do not listen to him, madame. He is a thief. He fooled you before. He will fool you again." But the cries of her baby grew louder, drowning out their words. A shattered choice sat last, with her hand shaking. The wealthy woman lifted her gaze. "Step aside," she whispered. The servants froze. I said, "Step aside." Her voice cracked like thunder. Reluctantly they moved. David stumbled forward, his heart pounding. He leaned close to the cradle, his trembling voice rising in song. And just like before, the miracle happened. The cries softened. The baby's chest steadied. Within moments, peace returned. The entire room fell silent, except for the gentle hum of the boy's voice. The mistress's tears when the song ended. The wealthy woman lowered her face into her hands. Tears streamed freely, tears of confusion, of shame, of heartbreak. She whispered to herself, so quietly that no one else could hear. "If he is guilty, then why does my child's soul recognize his voice? Why does peace come only from him?" Her heart was breaking. She looked at David once more. His eyes were red with tears, his body weak. But his love for her child shone brighter than gold. And she realized something. Even if the world called him a thief, even if society mocked her, she could not turn him away. But the servants were not done. Their hatred would not stop here, a darker threat that night, as the wealthy woman stayed near her baby. The servants gathered in secret once more. Their voices were sharp, their eyes filled with fury. "He has her heart," one spat. "She will never send him away now," another said bitterly. "Then we must go further," the old woman hissed. "If lies do not break him, something else must. Something stronger, something final." The others nodded slowly, their faces grim. The plot had grown darker. The mansion's golden walls seemed calm under the moonlight. But inside, storm brewed stronger than ever. The boy's song had saved the baby once more, but it had also sealed his fate, the golden mansion. But its beauty hid a storm inside. The wealthy woman had chosen to trust David again, letting him calm her baby when no one else could. His song had once more brought peace to the house, but peace did not last. In the servants' quarters, jealousy burned like fire. Whispers of hatred. The old servant, who had remembered David's disgraced family, spoke with venom in her voice. "He is too strong," she hissed. "The mistress cannot resist him now. As long as the child needs him, she will never send him away." The others nodded, their faces grim. "Then we must destroy him another way," one muttered. "Yes," another whispered darkly. "If lies will not break him, we must give the mistress a reason to fear him." The old servant leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. "Not fear of theft. Fear of danger. If she believes her child is not safe near him, she will cast him out forever." The servants exchanged looks. Their minds settled on one dangerous idea, planting fear the next morning, while David sang softly in the nursery. The servants moved quietly through the mansion. One dropped a small glass vase behind him, letting it shatter loudly. The sound startled the baby for a moment. The servant rushed in, pretending to scold. "Boy, be careful," she shouted so the mistress could hear. "Your clumsiness could hurt the child." David froze in confusion. But Ty did nothing. The mistress looked toward them, frowning slightly. "What happened?" "Nothing, madam," David whispered quickly. "It was not me." But doubt flickered again in her eyes. The servants saw it. Their plan was working. A dangerous trap that evening, while the mistress rested. The servants carried their plan further. One servant placed a burning candle too close to the cradle curtain. When the fabric began to smoke, she cried out dramatically, "Boy, look what you've done. You could have burned the child alive." David rushed forward, pulling the candle away with panic in his heart. "I did not put it there, I swear." But by the time the mistress entered, the scene looked clear. A frightened baby, a smoking curtain, and David standing guilty with the candle in his hand. The mistress's face turned pale. "David," she whispered, "was this your doing?" Tears filled his eyes. "No, madam, please believe me. I would never harm him." Her heart wanted to believe him. But the servants' sharp voices filled the room. "Madam, open your eyes," one cried. "This boy is dangerous. First a thief, now a careless child." Another added, "He will bring tragedy into this house." The wealthy woman said nothing. Her silence was heavier than words. "Caught?" one shouted, pointing at him. David shook his head, panic in his voice. "No, I did not take it. I swear." But their laughter was cruel. "You think she will believe you? You are nothing but the son of thieves." Tears filled his eyes as he clutched the spoon. He wanted to run, to hide, but the sound of the baby's cry echoed through the hall. His fear vanished. Without another word, he rushed to the nursery, singing softly until the cries faded, even in his pain. He remembered his promise to never let the child cry alone. The mistress's doubt later that night. The mistress entered the nursery. She saw David sitting quietly, the baby asleep in his arms, but her mind was restless. The whispers of the servants haunted her. The missing silver. The talk of thieves. The spoon found in his room. She studied David's face, trying to read his soul. Could he be lying? Could he be deceiving her all along? Her heart said no. But her pride, her fear of society, whispered yes. A storm inside the wealthy woman walked back to her chamber, her footsteps heavy, Her thoughts battled fiercely. If he is innocent, sending him away will destroy my child's peace. But if he is guilty, keeping him here may destroy everything I built. Which truth can I believe? She sat by the window, the moonlight pouring in, her heart torn in half. David's prayer in his small corner. David knelt quietly. He did not pray for himself. He did not pray for safety or comfort. He prayed for the baby. God, let him never cry in pain. Let him never feel hunger the way my sister did. Let him always find peace even if I am gone. His tears fell silently onto the floor. The mansion was silent. But beneath its beauty, danger grew sharper. The servant's plan was working. Doubt had entered the mistress's heart, and soon. Their whispers would force her to make a choice that could break everything apart. The mansion was no longer at peace. Though the baby slept soundly most nights, the air inside the golden walls felt heavy. Whispers floated in every corner, carrying poison from servant to servant until the whole household seemed infected, and at the center of it all was David. He did nothing but sing. He kept his head low, obeyed every command, cared for the baby with the patience of a saint. But no matter what he did, suspicion followed him like a shadow. The final straw one morning, panic spread through the halls. A piece of fine jewelry, an emerald necklace worth more than some. Men's entire homes was declared missing. The servants gasped loudly, their voices rising like thunder. "It is gone," one cried. "Stolen," another shouted. Within minutes, the entire mansion buzzed with noise. The mistress herself appeared, her face pale but stern. "Search everywhere," she ordered, and they did. Every drawer, every box, every corner of the great mansion was checked. But the necklace was nowhere to be found. Then one servant spoke softly, almost too softly. "Perhaps we should search the boy's room." The mistress's eyes flickered with unease. Her pride told her not to allow such insult. But her fear whispered louder. "Search it," she said at last. The discovery David's small corner held. Little, just a thin blanket, a wooden chair, and a few torn clothes. But beneath the blanket the servants gasped. There, gleaming against the rough fabric, was the emerald necklace. The room erupted with cries. "I knew it." One shouted, "A thief's son is always a thief." Another declared, "He has fooled us all." David's face drained of color. His legs shook. "No, no. I swear I did not take it. I do not know how it got there." But no one listened. The servants dragged him forward, their voices full of triumph. The mistress's heart brake. The wealthy woman stood frozen as the necklace was placed in her hand. Her heart thundered in her chest. David knelt before her, tears streaming down his face. "Madame, please, believe me, I did not take it. I would never steal." Her eyes wavered. His words carried the same innocence as always. But the evidence was undeniable. Her pride whispered cruelly, "Perhaps the servants were right all along. Perhaps he was using your child to gain your trust. Perhaps his family's shame still runs in his blood." She closed her eyes, torn apart. The baby's cry at that moment, the baby's sudden cry cut through the air. It was sharp, desperate, louder than it had been in weeks. The servants fell silent, all eyes turning to the cradle. David instinctively rushed toward the child, but two servants blocked his path. "No," they shouted. "You will not touch him again." The baby's cries grew louder, piercing, echoing through the golden halls. The wealthy woman's heart twisted in agony. She wanted to order the servants aside. She wanted to let David sing, but the necklace burned in her hand like fire, filling her with doubt. "Do I trust my heart, though the truth my eyes can see?" David's plead. David fell to his knees, his voice breaking. "Please, madam," he begged. "Let me calm him. I do not care what happens to me. Punish me. Send me away. But do not let your baby suffer. Let me sing just one last time." The mistress trembled. Her eyes darted between her child's tear-stained face and the boy's desperate eyes. The servants pressed closer, their voices harsh. "Do not listen to him, madame. He is a thief. He fooled you before. He will fool you again." But the cries of her baby grew louder, drowning out their words. A shattered choice sat last, with her hand shaking. The wealthy woman lifted her gaze. "Step aside," she whispered. The servants froze. I said, "Step aside." Her voice cracked like thunder. Reluctantly they moved. David stumbled forward, his heart pounding. He leaned close to the cradle, his trembling voice rising in song. And just like before, the miracle happened. The cries softened. The baby's chest steadied. Within moments, peace returned. The entire room fell silent, except for the gentle hum of the boy's voice. The mistress's tears when the song ended. The wealthy woman lowered her face into her hands. Tears streamed freely, tears of confusion, of shame, of heartbreak. She whispered to herself, so quietly that no one else could hear. "If he is guilty, then why does my child's soul recognize his voice? Why does peace come only from him?" Her heart was breaking. She looked at David once more. His eyes were red with tears, his body weak, but his love for her child shone brighter than gold. And she realized something. Even if the world called him a thief, even if society mocked her, she could not turn him away. But the servants were not done. Their hatred would not stop here, a darker threat that night, as the wealthy woman stayed near her baby. The servants gathered in secret once more. Their voices were sharp, their eyes filled with fury. "He has her heart," one spat. "She will never send him away now," another said bitterly. "Then we must go further," the old woman hissed. "If lies do not break him, something else must. Something stronger, something final." The others nodded slowly, their faces grim. The plot had grown darker. The mansion's golden walls seemed calm under the moonlight. But inside, storm brewed stronger than ever. The boy's song had saved the baby once more, but it had also sealed his fate, the golden mansion. But its beauty hid a storm inside. The wealthy woman had chosen to trust David again, letting him calm her baby when no one else could. His song had once more brought peace to the house, but peace did not last. In the servants' quarters, jealousy burned like fire. Whispers of hatred, the old servant, who had remembered David's disgraced family, spoke with venom in her voice. "He is too strong," she hissed. "The mistress cannot resist him now. As long as the child needs him, she will never send him away." The others nodded, their faces grim. "Then we must destroy him another way," one muttered. "Yes," another whispered darkly. "If lies will not break him, we must give the mistress a reason to fear him." The old servant leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. "Not fear of theft. Fear of danger. If she believes her child is not safe near him, she will cast him out forever." The servants exchanged looks. Their minds settled on one dangerous idea, planting fear the next morning, while David sang softly in the nursery. The servants moved quietly through the mansion. One dropped a small glass vase behind him, letting it shatter loudly. The sound startled the baby for a moment. The servant rushed in, pretending to scold. "Boy, be careful," she shouted so the mistress could hear. "Your clumsiness could hurt the child." David froze in confusion. But Ty did nothing. The mistress looked toward them, frowning slightly. "What happened?" "Nothing, madam," David whispered quickly. "It was not me." But doubt flickered again in her eyes. The servants saw it. Their plan was working. A dangerous trap that evening, while the mistress rested. The servants carried their plan further. One servant placed a burning candle too close to the cradle curtain. When the fabric began to smoke, she cried out dramatically, "Boy, look what you've done. You could have burned the child alive." David rushed forward, pulling the candle away with panic in his heart. "I did not put it there, I swear." But by the time the mistress entered, the scene looked clear. A frightened baby, a smoking curtain, and David standing guilty with the candle in his hand. The mistress's face turned pale. "David," she whispered, "was this your doing?" Tears filled his eyes. "No, madam, please believe me. I would never harm him." Her heart wanted to believe him. But the servants' sharp voices filled the room. "Madam, open your eyes," one cried. "This boy is dangerous. First a thief, now a careless child. Another added, "He will bring tragedy into this house." The wealthy woman said nothing. Her silence was heavier than words. David's despair later, in a small corner, David sat with his head in his hands. His voice trembled as he whispered to himself, "No matter what I do, they hate me. They blame me for things I have not done. Should I leave? But if I leave, the baby will suffer." Memories of his little sister filled his mind again, her weak body, her painful cries, her final breath. He could not let this baby suffer the same way, even if the world turned against him. He would not break his promise. "I will stay," he whispered. "For him, only for him." The mistress's sleepless night that night, the wealthy woman could not sleep. Her heart was torn. She remembered the boy's song, the peace it brought. But she also remembered the shattered vase, the burning curtain, the necklace hidden in his room. Could he truly be dangerous? Could he harm my child? Her pride demanded caution. Her heart demanded trust. She pressed her face into her hands and wept silently. Servants go to far the servants, seeing her weakness, decided it was time to strike harder. The next evening, as David carried the baby for a moment to calm him, one servant rushed in and cried out, "Stop! Look, he is shaking the child too hard." David's eyes widened in horror. "No, I am only rocking him gently." But before he could finish, the mistress appeared in the doorway. The sight of David holding her baby while the servant shouted accusations pierced her like a knife. Her voice broke, "Him to me." David obeyed instantly, placing the baby gently back in her arms. His face was pale, his heart breaking. "Madam, I would never hurt him," he whispered. But the servants' poisonous voices surrounded her. "Can you take the risk, madam?" one asked. "What if one day it is not gentle? What if one day he forgets himself? Your wealth, your name, your very child is in danger because of him." The mistress held her baby tightly, her heart trembling. The breaking point that night, when the baby finally slept, the wealthy woman stood in the nursery, staring at David with tear-filled eyes. "I do not know what to believe anymore," she whispered. "My heart says you are good, but everything around me says you are not. I am afraid. I am afraid for my child." David's eyes filled with tears. He fell to his knees. "Madame, I beg you, do not fear me. I live only to protect him. If you send me away, he will cry again. He will suffer. Let me stay for him, not for me." Her lips trembled. She wanted to trust him. She wanted to listen to her heart. But in the shadows, the servants watched, their eyes gleaming with satisfaction. They knew her pride would not let her ignore their warnings much longer. A silent prayer when David finally lay in his corner, he prayed again. "God, if they send me away, please. Please do not let the baby cry himself sick. Do not let him feel the pain my sister felt. Protect him, even if I cannot." His voice cracked as he wept into his thin blanket. The mansion slept, but its peace was fragile. The wealthy woman's trust hung by a thread, and the servants, filled with hatred, were ready to cut it. The golden mansion no longer felt like a home. Behind its tall gates and shining windows, fear, doubt, and jealousy crept through every hall. The wealthy woman held her baby closer than ever. Her heart torn between two voices, the gentle voice of David's song and the sharp, poisonous whispers of her servants. She stood at the edge of a choice that could change everything. The mistress's fear all night. The woman walked back and forth in her room. The baby slept peacefully after David's song, but her mind did not rest. What if the servants are right? What if one day he loses control? What if my child gets hurt because I trusted the wrong person? Her pride, her status, her motherhood, everything demanded she'll protect her child at any cost. But deep inside, another voice whispered, "And what if? You are wrong. What if sending him away brings back the cries you could not bear?" She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "What am I supposed to do?" The servants pushed harder by morning. The servants had grown bold. They surrounded her, pressing their lies like knives into her heart. "Madame, we beg you," one said, kneeling dramatically. "Do not risk the child's life. He is clever," another warned. "He hides his anger in songs, but one day it will show." "Your reputation will be ruined," added a third. People will whisper that a poor boy controlled your house, the old servant. The leader of their bitterness leaned close and spoke softly. Madam, love can blind even the wisest of hearts. Do not let pity blind you. A mother cannot gamble with her child's safety. The woman's hands shook as she held her baby. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. She whispered, almost to herself, "Perhaps you are right." David senses the change. David felt the shift in the air. Every glance from the mistress was now heavy with doubt. Every kind word seemed slower to come. When he sang, the baby still smiled, but the woman stood at a distance, her face unreadable. He whispered to himself one evening, "She no longer trusts me. The servants have won." Yet he still sang with all his heart. Not for himself, not even for her, but for the child who reached out for him with tiny, trusting hands. The confrontation, the breaking point came one stormy evening. Thunder shook the skies, and rain lashed against the tall windows. The baby cried again, louder than ever. The woman, desperate, looked at David. For a moment, her heart wanted to hand the child to him. But the servant's words echoed in her ears, "Do not risk the child's life. He will hurt him one day. You must choose." Her pride rose like a wall. She clutched her baby tightly and shouted, her voice breaking, "David, stay back!" David froze in shock. "Madame, he needs me." "Please," I said, "stay back," she cried. Her voice echoed through the room louder than the thunder outside. The servants exchanged satisfied looks. Their plan was working perfectly. David's knees buckled, but he stepped forward slowly. Tears in his eyes. "Madam," he whispered, "I swear before God I will never harm him. I live only to protect him. Do not push me away now, please. Let me help him." The baby cried harder in her arms, as if begging for David's voice. The wealthy woman's heart twisted in pain, but her pride, sharpened by fear, pushed her decision forward. She turned her face away. "Enough. I cannot risk it anymore." Her voice trembled as she spoke the words that shattered David's heart. "You must leave this house." Silence in the storm, the words hung heavy in the air. For a moment, the thunder outside seemed to fade, and the whole mansion fell into silence. David stood frozen, unable to breathe. His lips trembled, but no words came. Finally, his voice broke in a whisper. "Leave." The wealthy woman closed her eyes, holding her baby tighter. Her tears fell silently. "I am grateful for what you have done, but I cannot gamble with my child's safety. You must go." The servants' faces gleamed with cruel victory. A boy's broken heart, David felt his chest tighten as though the world had collapsed on him. He had nothing in this world, no family, no home, no future. The only purpose he had left was this child, and now even that was being taken from him. He knelt on the cold floor, his tears falling freely. "Madam, I beg you, do not do this. Without me, the baby will cry again. He will suffer. Please, do not make me leave him." Her lips trembled. Her heart screamed to take back her words. But her pride, her fear, her servant's poison all chained her decision. "It is final," she whispered. Tearful goodbye. The storm raged outside as David slowly rose to his feet. He looked at the baby one last time, his heart breaking into pieces. The child, still crying, stretched his tiny hands toward David, as if sensing he was being taken away from the only comfort he knew. David's lips trembled. He forced himself to sing a soft, final lullaby. His voice cracked with sorrow, but the baby listened, calming for the last time in his arms. Then, with trembling hands, David gently placed the child back into his mother's arms. "Goodbye," he whispered, and with that, he turned and walked toward the great doors of the mansion, each step heavier than the last. The mistress's hidden pain, the wealthy woman clutched her baby tightly, but her tears would not stop. "Oh." The servants surrounded her with words of comfort, but their voices felt empty. Her heart screamed, "You are wrong. You're making a mistake." But her pride silenced it. She sat in the nursery, staring at the door through which David had just walked out. The storm outside roared louder, as if the skies themselves mourned his leaving. David in the rain outside, the rain poured down, drenching David completely. He walked slowly through the dark streets, his heart heavier than his soaked clothes. Every corner of the city felt colder without the sound of the baby's laugh. His sister's memory returned stronger than ever, reminding him of why he had stayed, why he had fought. And now, for the second time in his life, he had failed to protect a child he loved. He dropped to his knees in the rain and whispered a broken prayer. God, please, if I cannot be with him, then protect him. Do not let him suffer as my sister did. The mansion was silent again. But this silence was not peace. It was the silence of a heart broken by pride, a boy cast out by lies, and a child robbed of the voice that could comfort him, and soon that silence would be shattered once more. The golden mansion stood quiet after David's departure. The storm outside had passed, but inside, another storm was waiting to begin. The wealthy woman sat by the window, her baby resting in her arms. For the first time in weeks, David's gentle song did not fill the air. The silence felt heavy, almost unbearable. At first she told herself it was for the best. He will be safer without that boy, she whispered, as if trying to convince herself. But safety soon felt like a cruel lie. The first cry that night, as the moon climbed high, the baby stirred. At first it was only a small whimper. The woman rocked him gently, humming a lullaby she barely remembered. She, my darling, sleep. But the cry grew louder, and louder, and louder still. The servants rushed in, each trying their best milk, rocking toys, even music boxes. Nothing worked. The woman's heart pounded. She whispered desperately, "Please, my child, calm down, please." But the baby's cries pierced through the mansion, stronger than the thunder that had shaken it the night before. Servants failure after hour. The servants tried everything they could. The cook carried warm milk. The maid rocked the cradle. Another servant sang loudly in off-key. But the baby only screamed harder, his tiny face red with exhaustion. Finally, the old servant muttered coldly, "Perhaps the child is ill?" No, another whispered nervously, "This is something else." Deep inside, they all knew the truth. The child missed David, but not one of them dared to say it aloud, a mother's desperation by dawn. The wealthy woman's face was pale with exhaustion. She had walked the halls all night with her baby in her arms. But the crying never stopped. Her pride whispered, "Do not think of him. You made the right choice." But her heart whispered louder, "You were wrong. Only he could calm your child." She covered her face and wept silently. "What have I done?" The baby grows weaker. 2 days passed. The mansion was filled with endless cries. The servants were restless, their eyes tired and red. The baby no longer screamed with full strength. His cries grew hoarse, weaker, as if his tiny body could not bear the pain anymore. The wealthy woman grew terrified. She rushed to the doctor, who examined the baby and said quietly, "He is not sick, madam. He is distressed. He needs comfort, not medicine." The woman's hand shook. "But I have tried everything," the doctor sighed. "Perhaps he longs for something familiar. A sound, a touch, a presence." She froze. Her mind went back instantly to David. The servants' panic. The servants gathered secretly, fear in their eyes. "If the child weakens more, she will blame us," one whispered. "No," said the old servant firmly. "We must make sure she never calls him back. If that boy returns, our place here will be destroyed forever. But what if the baby—" Silence. The old servant snapped. "We will find another way. We will bring in more doctors, more nurses, anything but not him." Yet even as she spoke, the baby's cries echoed through the mansion like a curse. Sleepless nights on the third night. The wealthy woman sat by the cradle, rocking her child with trembling arms. Tears fell down her cheeks. "Please, my darling, stop crying. I am here. I am your mother. Why is my love not enough?" The child wailed louder, his tiny hands reaching out as if searching for someone who was no longer there. The woman felt her heart breaking. For the first time, she spoke the words she had been afraid to admit. "He needs David." The servants interfered when she mentioned David's name the next morning. The servants rushed to her side, their voices desperate. Madame, no. Do not bring that boy back. He is dangerous. You cannot forget what happened. Think of your reputation, madam. People will laugh if they hear you begged for a poor boy to return. But the woman, exhausted and broken, whispered, "My reputation means nothing if I lose my child." The servants fell silent, their faces pale with fear. The turning point that evening, as the baby's cries echoed once more. The wealthy woman finally reached her breaking point. She clutched her child to her chest and whispered, her voice trembling with both shame and hope, "I cannot do this alone. I need him. My baby needs him." For the first time in her life, pride bowed to love. She ordered her guards, "Find the boy. Bring David back to me. Do not return without him." David in the shadows meanwhile. David wandered the wet streets, his clothes still damp from the rain, his stomach empty. He slept under broken roofs, sang quietly to himself when no one listened, and prayed every night for the baby's safety. He thought he would never return to the mansion. He thought he had lost everything, but fate was moving toward him. The golden gates of the mansion, which had once closed behind him, were about to open again. Not because of wealth, not because of pity, but because the truth could no longer be denied. Only David's song could save the child. The golden mansion was no longer a palace of peace. For days, the cries of the wealthy woman's baby had shaken its walls. Servants moved like ghosts, tired and broken. The mistress herself had lost her glow. Her eyes were red, her steps heavy. Finally, her love for her child broke through her pride. She gave a command that shocked everyone. "Find the boy. Find David. Bring him back to me." The guards bowed, but even they looked uncertain. "Yes, madame," they said. And with that, the search began. The guards in the city at night was not kind. Its streets were dark and wet from endless rain. The lamps flickered weakly, casting long shadows against the stone walls. The guards walked in pairs, asking shopkeepers, beggars, and travelers if they had seen a poor boy with a gentle voice. Some shook their heads. Some laughed. Others ignored them. "He is just another street boy," one man muttered. They disappear every day, but the guards did not give up. They knew the importance of their mission. Behind them, in the mansion, a baby's life depended on this search. David, meanwhile, wandered far from the wealthy quarters. His thin figure walked through alleys where no guards dared to go. His clothes clung to him, wet and cold. His eyes were hollow with hunger. Every night he lay beneath broken roofs, shivering. Every day he begged for scraps, though most ignored him. But still, he sang softly to himself, not for coins, but for memory. His sister's face returned in his voice. The baby's laugh echoed in his song. "Stay strong," he whispered to himself. "One day, perhaps, someone will need me again." He did not know that day had already come. False leads, the guards grew frustrated. Twice, they thought they had found him. Once, they followed a boy who matched the description. But he ran away into the night. It was not David. Another time they heard singing in a small street corner. But when they arrived, it was only an old blind man humming for coins. The wealthy woman grew impatient. Every hour without David made the baby weaker. "Find him faster," she cried. "Do you not hear my child's cries? They will not stop until he returns." The servants, however, were filled with dread. They gathered secretly in the kitchen. "She sent for him," one whispered. "If he returns, we are finished." "Yes," another hissed. "Our lies will be uncovered. She will see we tried to destroy him." The old servant slammed her hand on the table. "We cannot let him come back. If the guards find him, we must stop it." Her eyes glowed with malice. One way or another, he must never set foot in this mansion again. A narrow escape one night. As David rested under an abandoned archway, he was spotted by two of the guards. "There," one cried. "It must be him." But before they could reach him, two figures appeared from the shadows. They were none other than the old servant's hired men. "Not this boy," one of them growled, blocking the path. "You are mistaken." The guards frowned. Stand aside. The mistress ordered us to find him. The men glared but finally stepped away, pretending to leave. Yet as the guards moved forward, David, frightened, had already slipped into the maze of alleys. When the guards reached the spot, he was gone. David pressed himself against a wall, breathing heavily. He had heard them call his name. He had seen their uniforms, but his heart whispered, "Why would they want me? They cast me out. She told me never to return. Why would she send men to look for me now?" His doubt was heavier than his hunger. He shook his head and whispered, "No, it cannot be. She would never call me back." And so, he ran further away. The mistress's breaking heart back in the mansion, the wealthy woman grew weaker with every hour. Her baby's cries no longer sounded strong. They were fading, trembling, breaking. She held him close, whispering, "Hold on, my love. Hold on. I am bringing him back." But deep inside, fear stabbed her heart. What if it was too late? The guards refused to quit, despite the obstacles. The guards refused to abandon their mission. They searched marketplaces, inns, and abandoned quarters. They asked beggars and children. Finally, one old beggar woman gave them a clue. "Yes," she said slowly. "A boy with a soft voice. He sings when no one listens. He sleeps under the broken arch near the river." The guards' eyes lit up. "Thank you." They rushed toward the river. The final moment that night, David sat under the broken arch, humming softly. His voice trembled, but the melody was still filled with the same tenderness that once calmed the baby. Suddenly, he heard footsteps. He tensed, ready to flee. But this time, the guards moved quickly. Surrounding him before he could escape, David once said firmly, "We have come for you." David shook his head. "No, you must be mistaken. She sent me away. She does not want me." The guard's face softened. "You are wrong, boy. She sent us because her baby will not stop crying. He needs you. She needs you." David froze. His eyes filled with tears. "She needs me." "Yes," the guard said. "Come quickly. The child grows weaker by the hour." David's knees buckled, his heart pounding. At last, the truth was clear. The wealthy woman had called him back. The boy who had been cast out was about to return. The mansion that had rejected him was waiting again. But so were the enemies who would do anything to keep him away. The city was still dark when the guards led David back toward the golden mansion. His heart beat faster with every step. For days, he had wandered the streets, certain he was unwanted. Now they told him the mistress had sent for him. But was it true? Or was it another cruel trick? David kept asking himself, will she really welcome me back? Or will I be thrown out once more? Still, he could not ignore the thought that the baby needed him. That hope alone pushed his tired legs forward. The mansion awaits inside. The wealthy woman sat by the cradle, her baby weak in her arms. His cries were no longer loud, only soft, broken sounds. Every breath seemed fragile. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from sleepless nights. She had prayed, begged, and whispered to her child, but nothing worked. She clutched him tighter and whispered, "Hold on, my darling. He is coming. He must come." The servants stood around her, restless. Their plan was falling apart. If David returned, their lies would be revealed. The old servant hissed under her breath, "Cannot let him reach the child." At the gates, when the guards finally arrived with David, the heavy gates of the mansion creaked open. David paused at the threshold. Memories flooded back the night. He was thrown out in the rain, the baby's tiny hands reaching for him. The wealthy woman's trembling voice telling him to leave. His heart ached, but then he heard it. Faint cry, weak, broken, almost fading. His eyes widened. The baby. Without another thought, he stepped forward. The servants last tricked, but the servants were ready. Soon as David entered the hall, they rushed to the mistress, crying out, "Madame, stop. Do not let him near your child. He will only bring danger again. This is madness." The old servant raised her voice the loudest. "You cannot trust him. He will destroy everything." "You love?" The wealthy woman closed her eyes, torn once more. Her pride whispered, "They may be right." Her heart whispered, "But my child is dying without him." Her baby whimpered weakly in her arms. His tiny chest rose and fell with effort. At that moment she realized pride could not save him. Only David could. She opened her eyes and spoke with sudden strength. "Enough. Bring him to me." Face to face, David stepped forward, his eyes filled with tears. He dropped to his knees before her. "Madam," he whispered, his voice shaking, "thank you for letting me come back. I swear I will not fail him." The wealthy woman's eyes filled with tears of her own. She gently placed the baby in his arms. "Sing," she said softly. "Sing for him." The song of life. David held the child close to his chest. His hands trembled, but his voice rose steady and pure. He sang the same lullaby that had once calmed his sister, the same song that had filled the mansion with peace before. The melody floated through the golden halls like light breaking through darkness. The baby stirred, his weak cries softened. His tiny fists unclenched. Slowly, his breathing steadied, and then silence. Not the silence of fear, the silence of peace. The baby's eyes fluttered open, and he gazed at David with calm, trusting eyes. The wealthy woman gasped, covering her mouth with trembling hands. Tears streamed down her face. "My child. He is calm again." Truth revealed. The servants stood frozen, their faces pale. Oh, their lies, their tricks, their jealousy, all shattered in that single moment. The wealthy woman turned to them, her eyes blazing through her tears. "You poisoned my heart against him. You filled my home with lies. Because of you, my child nearly suffered beyond repair." The servants fell to their knees, begging for forgiveness. She raised her hand sharply. "Enough. Leave my sight. You no longer belong in this house." One by one, they were dismissed, their whispers silenced forever. Gratitude. The wealthy woman turned back to David, her heart full of both shame and gratitude. "David," she said softly, "I was blind. My pride made me doubt you, though my heart always knew the truth. You saved my child, not once, but many times. I cannot repay you." David's eyes filled with tears. He shook his head. "Madam, I did not do this for reward. I did it because no child should suffer like my sister did. Your baby deserves peace." Her eyes softened. For the first time, she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "From this day, you are not just a servant in this house. You are family. Will always have a home here." A new dawn. The sun rose over the mansion, painting the golden walls with light. For the first time in many days, the halls were filled not with cries, but with peace. The baby slept soundly in his cradle. The wealthy woman watched him with relief and joy, and beside her stood David, no longer the outcast, no longer the boy in the rain, but the boy whose song had brought life back into the mansion. Epilogue. Word of the miracle spread quietly through the city. People whispered of the poor boy whose song had saved a rich woman's child. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others in awe. But David did not care for whispers. All he cared for was the gentle rise and fall of the baby's breath, the sound of peace where there had once been endless cries. And so, the story that began with tears ended with music. A boy with nothing gave everything. And in return, he found a home, a purpose, and a family.